Welcome to the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of deep tech entrepreneurship, company founders and venture capitalists. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey. In each episode, we explore the minds behind groundbreaking technologies, the visionaries who dare to push the boundaries of innovation, and the investors who fuel the growth of tomorrow's game changers. Welcome to this week's episode. Today's guest is Georg Hildebrand, who is a principal engineer of data and machine learning architecture with Gropyus. Georg is, I believe, my first return guest, but returning from a different podcast that we probably done about 4 to 5 years ago, where we spoke about high-performing computational systems. Today, however, we're going to talk about his experience in management, setting OKRs, leadership style, managing yourself to have success. But I guess, look, before we do all that, Georg, for people that don't know you, let's take it back a bit. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me again in one of your shows. Great pleasure. Those that don't know me, I guess most people don't know me. I have some background in computational neuroscience and bioinformatics. That was like in the early 2000s. Then I basically switched from the university to consulting for a time, and then I continued my track in big data industry, starting as a data scientist, and then my latest notable station was likely Zalando, where I built my last 4 years in Zalando from 2016 to 2020. I was building there the machine learning platform, taking care of like HPC computing, machine learning platform in the cloud, Google Cloud, AWS, and then I switched to construction industry recently. Now I'm there responsible for machine learning infrastructure and data infrastructure. And that's me.
Nice. Yeah, so tell us about Gropyus, because I mean, want to get a good difference here, not only in industry, but if we talk about, like, you've come from Zalando being, I guess I like to consider them quite similar to like a German version of like Amazon, right? They started off as a fashion company, but have managed to turn into like a software monster. Like, how does Zalando differ to Gropyus?
Yeah, so I can say the difference is quite huge, right? So Zalando is online retail economy, so everything around fashion online, basically shoes, clothes, jackets, pullovers, you can buy accessories, everything. And also there are most of the data use cases and machine learning use cases were in selling these, optimizing sales, forecasting, predicting deliveries, and so on. My current employer is Gropyus, and this is a young company that's in the construction and housing market. So the idea is robotics-based, automatized, or industrialized construction and housing. And it's a completely different industry, right? So the data is different, the life cycle is different, the value proposition is different in a certain sense, and very interesting though, very relevant for sustainability. And but I guess explaining all the details would make up a different podcast. I would get podcast topic, right?
Yeah, no, nice. And look, let's not beat around from it. You're now a principal engineer. You do have a pedigree of management background. And this is what I really wanted to talk to you about, right? You've, as you said, been in Zalando 2016, through some hyper growth years, grown some quite sizable teams, grown quite a team there at Gropyus as well. So, within that, I wanted to ask you about management styles, about, I mean, just basic team management. And I guess starting off, let's just talk about you, working with you. What's been your leadership style?
Yeah, so for me, I can maybe open up the question in the beginning a little bit and going back to the roots, right? For me, it was like I'm now about 15 years in the industry, and what for me was a very natural progression towards leadership, right? So that started in my time in Zalando, where after some time you start getting your own project responsibility, and then when we formed the data platform team, there was at some point also the question: do you want to lead the team? Do you want to have leadership? I myself was personally always opting for more hands-on, so split, so helping building teams, but being more on the principal track. Yeah. So that being said, it was a natural growth for me. And then when I joined Gropyus, there was also the question, an example, we see you, or there was the assumption that you're hired as one of the most seniors in your area, right? Can you help us grow a team? And please help us grow a team. And then I also accepted the task and the challenge of building data teams, especially in the area of construction. And that was for me a very interesting time always, right? Because when you grow naturally, the first thing you do, of course, is you read what are others doing. You try to figure out what is your role description, what can you contribute. For me, it was always this kind of important that it's authentic, this process for me, right? So I was never doing it in a way that I said, this is my next career step. I want team leadership, or I want to go on the principal track. What for me was always very important is that I have a personal contribution to something. You know, so I like technology, I like working with people, but for me, it was, for my leadership style, it was always important also to be authentic. And that was what was driving me. Also, when I was then for a while in Gropyus, I was almost 2 years head of data and data engineering and machine learning platform, and hired a lot, grew the team, took responsibility for budget, communicated, strategic development. It's really a lot. So there is it's a huge package of what gets into that, right? And I can certainly say, when it comes to leadership style, to just wrap up your question here, for me, I was usually seeing myself in this kind of emotional / transactional leader, right? So I always try to figure out what is my task and how can I be of best value here or do my best contribution. Because this was always my goal, and I hope that all my colleagues, if they listen in here, would agree with that I always try to have a contribution. My need was never to purely work for the money, right? And so I can clearly say, yeah, it's an organic growth in my case, right? But I always had this kind of North Star that I said I want to have a contribution.
Nice. And look, we've had similar experiences, right? I've naturally progressed into leadership roles. I'm doing it not 15 years, but 9 years. I'm in my space again. You hit certain levels, certain experience. People expect these things from you, but there's an option to not do it. I guess one of the things that I've always struggled with, I've always found quite hard, and even just saying getting it right is like, setting OKRs. And you, like, from your experience, you've come from Zalando, which I'm sure was a great place to learn this, right? Obviously you don't scale and grow like that to be as successful as they have without doing this right. But like coming in then and not having much experience with doing it, like what did you do? Where did the setting OKRs start?
Yeah. So what I can say, first thing, for me, OKRs are a very important tool, which in my experience become more important the bigger your organization is, right? I mean, you all noticed when your organization is growing, when you're like in a small startup or in a small group of 10, 20, 40, 50, maybe even 100 people, you can easily communicate goals, share the vision, right? One of the big tasks and responsibilities is for a leader, from my point of view, is to, in example, establish a vision and share it over and over again, keep people on track. When an organization, then like in Zalando's case, when I was there around, there was clearly the need for OKRs. Why? Because, in example, for a machine learning platform, you might have 40 to 60, 80 teams that use your service, right? And then you need to build this platform service for them. So you're doing basically ML ops for a major stack of like the product that the company is using. And then if you would not have a concise breakdown structure in how you reach the overall company goals, right, via the particular goals of the company, then you have a problem. And what is the biggest responsibility here for a leader is then understand the OKRs and communicate them in the team and then go in this iteration. So the way I learned to work with OKRs was usually we had a product organization, we were preparing them well, we understood, is it authentic, does it make sense? And the funny thing is you only learn what an OKR is worth when you see when it's failing, right? So this is very important. So I don't know if there is a better example, but you can have OKRs which are completely screwed up. Yeah, so you can have OKRs which are not properly communicated and not properly understood, and then still the organization may try to break them down into other deliverables for the subcomponents for the top teams, but at all it's not understood how they contribute value to the company. Yeah, and I also saw these cases, and then you see how difficult it also is to come up with proper OKRs. Yeah, and if you then have leaders which let's say, in example, are not carefully enough communicating and discussing these OKRs. Yeah, so you have the top level OKRs, and then you have your department OKRs and your team contributions. Yeah, then you have certainly a problem. So my recommendation also as a leader is when you be careful, or I guess more for CTOs, is not every organization necessarily needs OKRs at every stage, right? You need to have a very mature leadership team to not fall into the trap of, hey, let's do OKRs at any price, and then disagree and commit. And in the end of the day, a lot of deliverables are there where it's not understood how they generate value for the company, right?
Yeah. Now, I'm always, and look, this is me personally, small teams, small businesses, I find they might not call it an OKR, right? They might call it their larger goal, big hairy goal, whatever the terminology that they want to use for it. It's what they call as being good or being great, right? And this is it. You want to reverse back from that. But to set up your team for success, you want to have processes, right? You want to have. Let's start off at a weekly set, right? How can you successfully backtrack from an OKR or a goal and transform that into, right, it's Monday stand up. This is what we got to do this week.
Yeah. So this is an interesting point. So usually how I have seen that working is you have your top level OKRs, right? And you have the OKRs for your department or your subcomponent or team or business unit, however you call it. And then what you should do is with your product organization, you of course agree on release plans. Yeah, this was an example in Zalando. We used OKRs very excessively, and there we could clearly link all activities to an OKR. So on the team level, there were the gradings for the OKRs. What is the goal? So very specific goals. I think very specific and measurable goals are important for OKRs. That means 0.3 means we have integrated an amount of data into our data lake platform. Yeah. Or we have n machine learning use cases deployed live in production until then and then. Right, and then you measure this, and this is then how you can say how successful you are in the OKR. And in your board, you see it because you have text there, you have work streams there. You can also, I always would recommend anyway to also jump on metrics then and monitor properly how you're progressing here, because you also want to see how good you're reaching the OKRs. And for any team and in the daily and weekly work, this is very helpful because it gives the team orientation. If you're this is basically, I think there is not too much examples needed here, but this is how you would see it then in an optimal case.
Have you ever used, well, it sounds like you have, but I don't know if you've directly used the anagram SMART targets.
SMART target. So yes, these are for goals, right? I need to remember that it should be simple,
specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Yeah, for goals. Yeah. I mean, I confess, I recently was in a leadership training where they pulled it out, and I thought like, oh, that's all stuff.
We all know it. It just
but it's right. I mean, the idea, of course, is to give you goals focus, right? Because this is similar for OKRs. This is what I said. Let's say you make an OKR or a goal for your team where you say, I don't know what, every data pipeline should process at least 1 terabyte of data per day. But then you look into your data pipelines and you say like, well, what is the use of that? Right? Why should we have this OKR? Maybe there is a phase where you need to scale up, and you can ask your product manager, and they say yes because we have next year this and this launch, and the new collaboration will come in, and then we have to serve Uber with whatever service, and then you can maybe, it must be valuable and reasonable, yeah. And that is when you're building OKRs. I mean, for me as an algorithmic guy, I can say it's a little bit like dynamic programming or something like that, right? You break a task or a goal into sub goals. And of course, what you want as a manager and a leader is that when all your teams deliver, that the results again are able to be combined to form or contribute back to the bigger goal. It's like a pyramid, right? So the top management looks at the numbers, at the KPIs, and then when you go vertical into the stacks of the teams, you of course want that these numbers then are, let's say, made up by certain deliverables, right? Like in example, reduced churn rate, better recommendations on your website, or in the construction industry, that could be better quality of something. Yeah, and you want to really measure. You want to know whether you got better, right? And this is really requiring then that you have specific goals. They must be measurable. They must be fulfillable, right? Also attainable. Sometimes it's not only important that everyone understands the goal, but you also need to have the right people at the right positions so that it can really also, when you build OKRs or in general business goals, it must be understood whether your teams are able to fulfill these goals. Otherwise, it will be very frustrating. Let's say you put a bunch of, I don't know what, in my case, architects, and you give them the task to design a data platform. Yeah, but they don't have the technical capability of that. They might be highly intelligent people, but they would come up with something completely different because their paradigm is a different one. They work in a different style. So you need to also see that all the teams are set it up and so on. And yeah, so specific measurable goals are important from my point of view. We can say that clearly. And then I usually try to rely on my own understanding of the goal. Yeah, so I try to really understand, is this really how I'm seeing the problem as well? Or do I have the feeling there is some kind of mismatch? You know, like I only get 40% of it. I don't understand how this will contribute to value. Then you should speak up again. Then you should once more challenge it. This is, I think, also a responsibility as a leader. Yeah.
Really good examples of engineering practice there of how to, set something up, how to create a target or a deliverable that you want to achieve, right? If you want to build an API, give it up. Don't just say build an API. You got to be clear. What is it? What do you want it to do? When you want it done by? Not to say you want to say how you want it to be done. If they've got that experience, you want to leave that element for innovation, right? Because it could it could leave a bit there. But I guess if we're talking about mid to long term goals, right? You have your mid to long term projects. Everyone's working on them alongside some short term deliverable projects. How do you reflect that in your communication style? And with that, I mean, if you're doing weekly meetings, mid-weekly meetings, end-of-week meetings, how do you communicate? This is where we were. This is where we are. This is where we want to be. Or do you even do it 3 times a week? Do you do it once a week? Like, how do you maintain that engagement from everyone through communication?
This is a very good question. And I cannot say that I have the optimal solution here. I, for myself, I must even say I failed in the past. And I confess also I struggled a lot often with communicating vision. I can, in example, say that like when we started, there was the need for building a machine learning platform in Zalando in 2016. Yeah, so we saw we are in the cloud, we have on-premise stack, we have this large data science community where a lot of people have demand, and we said, well, we need to come in some solution for this. We need feature stores, model deployment. Everyone is reinventing the wheel. We want Spark, we want views, learning, all this kind of stuff. And at the same time, no one was really taking care of that, right? So the first thing was to develop a long-term strategy, a vision, right? This is usually what we do at the beginning, and then you convince people to buy in. And then suddenly you drop into the details and you do the first release and everyone likes it. And then you think about details and features. And then there is a critical point sometimes, from my point of view, where you need as a leader, especially, where it's your job to zoom out again and challenge, right? Are we on the track? Do we still have the kind of North Star, right? Are we really going in the right direction with principles? And what I at the time did, what I liked is I wrote down principles where I thought like these are like transient concepts, how we build infrastructure, how we build platform engineering, how we measure success. And then you can sit with your team and discuss these principles, right? And then you can share them and then you can look into that. Like an example, for me, it was always very important that the company has a consistent platform strategy. Yeah? So you'd say, okay, we are on AWS, but we also have on-premise stack. So what is the future of scheduling workloads on-premise and in AWS? Is it via Kubernetes? Is it via, let's say, HPC scheduling with Slurm? How do you, Slurm is a resource scheduler for, especially for things like parallel GPU jobs also, right? And you need to have someone who has this big view and who really can present a big picture in that. And then you go with decision makers and and also with your team and you challenge that from time to time. What you then can also do is on a regular basis, you could also do strategic updates with the team. So this is something that we at the moment also do in my current role, that you do on a every quarter or every half year. You do strategic check-ins to give the opportunity for all the engineers to ask their questions. But you can also write, and this is something that I recommend to everyone: write it down. Like what we did in Zalando is we wrote down the strategy of the machine learning infrastructure. We wrote down the idea that we had. We gave presentations. We wrote an expose. This is also very important and something that I think every leader should learn. Be able to write down your idea and your approach and your vision for the next 2 to 3 years in something that's not more than 8 to 10 pages, right? With a half a page executed summary on the beginning, with a clear problem statement, how you're gonna solve that and how you do it. Because what we then also switched over to was that we were not giving PowerPoint presentations, but we shared these documents and we updated them. So they act as a pre-read before we had important meetings. And then you can base all your decision documentation on top of that, right? And then you can see over time, are you still on track?
Can I ask you, how open to feedback from the team are you when it comes to these update meetings, whether they're quarterly, half yearly?
I would say pretty much. I hope that everyone is very honest with me, and I always encourage people. I also try to give examples where I also appreciate critical feedback, also when it's in an appropriate round, right? I try to be there. Something that I realized: the higher you are in the hierarchy, the more difficult it is to get critical feedback. That's for sure. That has very, very clear reasons. But I
think that comes down that you're not the guy they speak to at the coffee machine anymore or the water cooler, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still hope that I'm not that kind of guy who people approach, because what is a nice thing. What I believe is, on what I'm telling everyone, and I think most of my colleagues know this story because I always tell it almost everyone who was in my supervision, under my supervision in the past years. I tell them, when we all leave this company or this position in 2, 3, 4 years, hopefully later than sooner, right? I think we will not necessarily look back and say, wow, crazy project, we did this, we earned a lot of money, but we will say it was a nice time with these colleagues, right? I can say I'm friends with some of my old past colleagues. There are friendships, there is relationships, right? And I like this Chinese saying that the path to eternity goes through the hearts of the people around you, right? And I think if we are humble and if we can stay at a level where we don't lose the contact with our employees, right? And we sometimes also approach employees on an eye level, we can avoid that, right? And I can say I never was top level management where you're really like 5 levels above everyone else and you can simply not afford knowing everyone anymore. Thanks God, I can say so far I was never in that. But I also realized there are situations where you don't necessarily get very honest or very open feedback. Let's say honest, I guess it's usually, but very open feedback or direct feedback. What I can recommend everyone here is, of course, try to pick people up from time to time. An example for me, I also usually was trying to show active interest in everyone in the office. Yeah, so I mean, it starts with the cleaning lady. Yeah, so there's a cleaning lady entering the IT guys know it. There's usually a cleaning lady which collects the coffee cups and puts them to the dishwasher. When you're waiting for your coffee, why not helping her, right? This is not only an attitude, right, that you're friendly and you're not. I think everyone should have this attitude, right? There is no one better in terms of level or something like that, from my point of view, right? It's kind of work ethics, but it also sends the clear signal to yourself and to all the others that there is no difference in habitus, in level, right? And I think from my point of view, this is very important. What I usually really disliked was that people left, like when you have a group of leaders and they leave the meeting room, coffee cups, bottles, waste, maybe even from stuff they brought from lunch, no time for lunch, and there is still like half a baguette on the table, and they think like, okay, the other dudes, they are below us and you can leave it. That rarely happens, but you can see this sometimes, right? And then I would challenge the attitude in example. And I think this is this one thing that everyone can do from the beginning on, right? To avoid that there is a gap between you and others, right? Because it starts in your mind, I guess, right? In your perception of yourself.
Really good behavior to have. I want to talk to you then on, let's say, like the employee level, right? So unfortunately, performance management is a case where it sometimes has to be done. Sometimes you've got people that are great and they've just not been performing for 2 or 3 months. They've been in the business. It requires a different type of treatment to someone who's in the business 2 or 3 months and just isn't with it. And again, I think reflectively, if you don't have good processes set up with clear expectations and good communication, you will never know if someone's actually underperforming because you can't really benchmark them, right? So assuming you have all this done well and you're able to understand if someone is performing or not performing, how do you take someone on the journey of performance management? And we say performance management, it's not a way to coach out. I like to think of it, it's a way to coach up and bring them to the level that you want them.
Yeah, I think mentoring and coaching and developing people is one of the main tasks, depending on your role, of course, right? But it's like when you're in a startup or you're starting something new, the easiest situation if you can have is that you have the chance, of course, to build a team and to hire people and then develop them, right? The more challenging situation is if you come into a team which is already existing and someone else introduced the leadership style and you inherit basically something, right? And it also looks different because how I'm approaching that is, I mean, in the best case, of course, your company already has a good, well-managed framework by HR from that, right? And let's say your company also has some kind of very fair policy how to develop people, right? So that it's fair in terms of what they read, what they are doing, and what they are contributing. And so you can start from a very clean ground, right? In the worst case, it happens that you see, wow, this guy, because he joined last year, is earning twice as much as the guy who's already 10 years in the business, right? This is then a mess. So the first thing is, of course, fairness here. So you need to create a basis where you can start treating and comparing people on a similar basis. The next thing is then not only your feedback matters, but the feedback of all the colleagues matters. And the colleagues which are working together with your team members on a daily basis, right? Because also what I realized that it's simply not possible during a week to work with everyone in your teams on a daily basis. And then there are two big streams that I'm seeing. The one is the personal development. This is the first one, which is about how can I, as an employee, reach my personal targets, become better, develop myself in the direction where I'm motivated to go. This is something that I usually would see completely separated from getting more salary, getting to the next career step. The other one is this professional thing. Can you get more salary? How can you get into the next position? And in the optimal cases, you have criteria here. You can develop these. What I'm a believer in, and this is also what I'm trying to tell everyone I'm mentoring, is work first on your personal capabilities and on your personal goals, right? Because I'm a strict believer, if you're fascinated and motivated by what you're doing, you will do an amazing job. This is this paradigm of knowledge workers that we are all in. We all work with our knowledge. And I see that in the teams around me, I usually had people which were equally skilled to me, right? On the principal level or on the head level or on the lead level. You always have people which are even older than you, which have more experience, but are on a different career track, right? And these people, you need to develop them. It's expected from you to development because it's your business function. And then it must be fair, it must be comparable. So use feedback from the colleagues, use one-on-ones, set up one-on-ones on at least a bi-weekly or monthly basis. Better would be once a week, check in, because you also want to lead the people in a way that you understand, are they happy with what they do? Are they having the feeling that they can grow in a situation? And you need to build this trust that they tell you that. Well, what we talked before, right? Ping people on a coffee chat. In the past, this was easier because you saw the people on a daily basis in the office and you could see their body language. You could see how they are doing, how they are behaving. Today, in a remote setup, this is way more difficult. So you need more active support here. And yeah, and then it's of course make up some goals, tasks, not delivery plans, development plans for your peers, and be transparent. So I'm never promising anything, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know. HR will give you a budget line, and this I think what many people who have never done this don't know is the budget for hiring new colleagues is usually a different one from the budget for increasing the salaries and the positions of others, right? So and budget and salary bands are overlapping. This is also what many people don't know. So they say, yeah, I haven't got that and that and then that, and then you're suddenly you need to explain the why, right? Why was a decision? So the better is to have a continuous process with your employees or with your teammates, and very transparently also give them feedback over the course of the year, right? Because what's also shitty if someone says, yeah, but I'm not getting my salary increase from you, but I think I was super good in that. And then you say, yeah, but half a year ago, you were not as good as that and that. Also, don't compare people between each other, right? It makes really a bad team atmosphere. So the best is you need this habit of continuously giving feedback, continuously receiving feedback, asking for feedback, encouraging your colleagues to give each other feedback, right? And then really understand what do you want, make up also clear goals with your employees, right? But don't make it like a checkpoint list, because what then happens is they try to fill the checkpoint list and then they say, here, please give me the next position. And then you need to explain them, well, we don't have the project, we don't have the money, right? So it's a challenging business, and it needs a lot of discipline from my point of view, and a lot of honesty also. And yep, that I think.
It's really, really good opportunity, as you said, to even link communication in with performance management, to set it back to even the basics of weekly, monthly. Here's our yearly vision. Here's our goals. Here's our company policies. This is what we stand for as a business. When you joined 2 years ago, this is what we believed in. Just to let you know, we still do. Here's how we're achieving against it, right? Really, really good opportunity to do that. Talking about growing and scaling teams, right? It's not easy, right? It's time consuming to find the talents. You already have a big team and lots of projects to do. It's hard to find people that fit technically and maybe even personally, or you would say culturally, whatever it might be. How do you set up for success for growing the team?
That's a very important point. What I can say is, so I have now almost 3 years behind me of growing 2 teams, data teams which are preparing the construction industry for scale and growth. And there is a challenge in the construction industry to become digitalized, and there is lack of tool support, right? There's really, like, I always compare it like where the internet was in the early 2000s. This is for me where the construction industry is in terms of digitalization. And it all starts with a clear vision. Yeah, so you need to understand how am I gonna solve the problems on the market, right, that we have as a business, and then you think about what are the steps to reach these goals, right? So the vision, and then you come up with a strategy, and then you figure out, okay, how can we do that? And then you get a fair understanding of what kind of skill set you need for that. And then the problem starts, of course, because then you go on the market, like in my case, we're searching for knowledge engineers. On the market, there are a lot of people who call themselves data engineers, but few call them knowledge engineers. Just a new breed of data engineer in the market who has a very special kind of way of using data and building metadata model that encapsulate knowledge so that you later on can train machine learning models on that. Because we all know there is ChatGPT on the market, but where it really is not helpful is when it has no data, right? And it doesn't know the concepts. And when you're doing building, or when you're doing construction engineering, yeah, you have knowledge concepts which are super complicated. You're basically doing complex system design. And in order to have valuable data here, you need people who can sit with a domain expert and get that information and this knowledge into a metadata model, so that you can automatize on top of that. that you can link, an example, a 3D model with a production line from a smart factory, that you can link IoT stream data in, and then on top, be later on possible to do predictions, right? So you need to understand that stack, you need to understand these requirements, then you need a good recruiter, and then you need to be lucky, because of course the market is usually empty, and then you get some interviews in. So in example, for me, you interview 100 people, and then you have maybe once every 10, you have a very good candidate, or once every 20, right? And then you need to get that candidate, because of course the pull in the market for these people is very, very high, because you're not the only company hiring in this area, an example, at the moment. So you want someone who is really good in data engineering, you want someone who's really good in knowledge engineering, understands semantic web and this kind of stuff, and you want someone who already in optimal case has some experience with machine learning to understand your rhythm, right? Because you need domain experts. And you want someone who is senior enough to run their own project, because the first thing is, when you're building a team, you of course need to balance how you hire juniors and seniors, because you also need to mentor and develop these people, right? So if you start with a bunch of juniors or unexperienced people, that's even more work for you, right? So you need to build a good crew, and then you need to take care that they are not too homogeneous in terms of skills, right? And attitude. You need to do the cultural aspect that they fit your vision. And this is how you go. And then I would say today this takes easily more than a year, this process. If you say you want to build, let's say, a team of 6 or 7 people, you don't do it with a snap with a finger, except you have very, very much money and an army of recruiters. And but it's a mix of luck, then being lucky, finding the right people at the right time, having very good HR, and then staffing up your team. And then of course it's always this reflection: what is this person then contributing in the team, right? Is it really filling this gap for me? So in example, in my case, I know I need someone who best has experience already in the construction industry, knows big data tooling stack, and knows semantic processing. Yeah, and then you find 3 people. One of them is a master student. The other one is the super duper dude coming from Bosch. And the other one is someone from, I don't know what, US, not sure yet whether he really wants to stay in the US or go to Germany. And then you're lucky, one of them says yes or one of them passes the thing. And then of course you have to balance that as well, right? And yeah, I hope that was answering your question well enough.
Oh, I like it. Look, let's talk about you. So responsible for the team, responsible for your self-leadership, setting OKRs. And quite funny, because not a lot of people think about this, but we spoke about it. How do you manage yourself? And I mean, in a sense, like, how do you create your own responsibilities and your own OKRs for how you liaise with your team?
Yeah, I can say maybe I'm a little bit special here, because I mean, not special. Maybe others are the same like that, but one not too often speaks. I don't have that much opportunity to speak about these topics, right? But let's say how I did it. What influenced me a lot is I was doing a lot of youth work in my when I was young myself, when I was a student, right? So I worked with young kids, helped them. We did like weekend activities, helped them speak about how they are doing, guided them, mentored them up to the age of 20 or something like that. And what I learned during this time, because I had mentors myself, was this kind of thing: how do you set your personal goals, right? And for me, that led to this process that I, at some point, nearly more than a decade ago, way longer even, that I started also building my own personal manifesto, where I said, okay, what is important for myself? How do I want to live? How do I want to be? And I can say that nowadays, after being more than 15 years in the industry, this also influenced a lot for me how I'm leading people, how I'm motivating people. Someone who influenced me here a lot is my wife, because she was working in a hospice. This is this kind of hospital where people go that now they're gonna die, right? And then I can tell this story because at one day we spoke about her job, and I said, oh, how can you do this, work with people that now gonna die? And we chatted about the situations, and she told me how much she likes that, and how valuable this work is, and also how emotional. And I was impressed by that. And what especially impressed me is that when I asked, what do people regret when they know they're gonna die in a few weeks, right? Uncurable disease. And she told me that almost all of them, if they regret anything, all of them regret something, but if they regret something, they regret not having invested into their relationships more. Right? And this brings me back what I said in the beginning. For me, leadership is also about this kind of motivating people. I think especially in the tech industry or in the software engineering industry, no one of us is needed to work somewhere, although you don't like it. Or most of us, hopefully, right? At some time, you're good enough. There is a lot of demand on the market. So none of us should be forced to just work simply for the money, right? And then there is always the thing that I think, like, for me, myself, I always try to make clear this wall I'm climbing at the moment, right? Is what I'm seeing, what I'm expecting to see behind that wall. And this is something I'm challenging myself every now and then, every week, basically, right? Is it that still what I want to see? And this was for me an example when I took over the department leadership in my last position, that I thought, wow, this is a good opportunity, right? And then over time, when you realize actually it's not your way of working anymore, it's not what gives you this life, right? It's not your values, what you want to do in a way that it makes you super motivated, right? Because I learned, okay, I actually also like hands-on work. I like to really pair with people when implementing something, solving challenging tasks together, right? And that was for me an example and an inspiration to go take my personal manifesto and go back to the point and say, it makes sense. Let's go back to a principal role. Let's work more on technical topics again. And this is something that I can recommend everyone to reflect, also every leader by yourself, because I think your employees will also see whether you're authentic or not, right? I mean, everyone who has been a while in the industry knows, likely also colleagues, which are just there for the career. They jump into a position, are around for 1 or 2 years, and then they jump to the next one. And then they are gone. And they do like high-speed projects. They push through things. They have maybe a very, a very direct, autocratic leadership style. They get very fast upset when things are not running as they envision. And they eventually also have quite a resistance towards, let's say, feedback or critical feedback, right? So, but in the end of the day, what I always think is, we all gonna die at some point, right? And we all must understand, if you want to know how you should live, you should understand how do you want to die at some later on, right? And this is this idea: do you want to regret something, and do you see yourself motivated and happy? And so what I'm then doing in the consequences, I'm orienting a lot my leadership style on the work of Viktor Frankl. He was a psychologist, I don't know the English exact word, but he was in the Second World War. He was Jew, and he lost all his family during the time of the Holocaust. And what he did after the war, he reflected with the mind of a psychologist, psychiatrian. I don't know the word.
Sorry, psychologist is right. Yeah,
psychologist, right? He reflected from that his experiences, and what he realized is that the most resilient and the strongest persons are not those which are physically strong, right, or have special body condition, but those which have a motivation, which have a goal, right? Those people are the most motivated one. And he wrote all these books about these stories. And what he basically then figured out is there is this inherent desire for humans about meaning. So we all want to love, eat, drink, maybe also Wi-Fi. Yeah, we need it. But what he also claimed, and I think there's something true in it, we all want to have meaning with our work, right? We want to have a contribution. And that influenced me a lot. And that is also something that I always try to tell the people that I'm supervising and mentoring. I always ask them, do you understand your values? Do you understand why you are doing this, right? In your personal development, is this wall that you're at the moment climbing, is this a wall that you think others would want to see you to climb above? Or is it really something where you say, once I climb this wall, what I will see will really make me happy, it motivates me on a daily basis also to go through challenging times. Because the worst you can have and the best way to waste your lifetime is to work on something where you really in the morning wake up and you think, like, oh my God, how can I survive this week? And how can I continue here? And those of the listeners or the people that are interested in that, I really recommend this book by Viktor Frankl. It's available on the internet. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And I think it was one of the most influential books in the past century. It influenced very important thinkers also in the modern management theory. he was one of these very early guys who also had a very ethical way of thinking about this kind of how we as humans are striving for meaning with what we do. And for me, it was always clear with my work, I want to have a contribution. An example, going to Gropyus from Zalando was for me because I saw all the problems out there, climate change. We have this kind of ecological crisis. We have this kind of housing crisis. So rents are going up now on. And then the funders came around and I saw this vision and I thought, yes, that's my chance to have a contribution, to help one of the big CO2 polluters. This construction industry is really producing a lot of CO2. To have a contribution to something that matters for me, something that concerns me. And this was giving me a motivation then to switch my role, right, away from helping others to sell more online fashion to towards building sustainable buildings, helping people to live in something where, when you're living in these buildings, you're saving CO2. You can help really becoming part of something that is bigger and better. And this is always for me, this kind of thing. Motivation, I think, is a key role as a leader, right? You must motivate your team, right? And for me, this is always this kind of task that I give everyone, if they want, of course, that I say, think about what motivates you. Why are you here? Why are you working in a team? What is your contribution? Everyone in the team should always be able, in optimal case, to answer the question: what is their role? What is their value contribution to the team? Why are they with the team? For the motivation, right? And also, what is their vision? Yeah. And then you can start developing people, because then you know how you pull them with you towards your common vision.
Can I ask you, really, really good points there, by the way. Fascinating stories. The one thing that jumped out to me there is something that I actually already do at the moment, right? I do 1, 3, 5, and 10-year plan, and I reverse engineer it and try and create that into my motivations and what I try and do. You said relationships was quite important to it as well. So I have my personal ones, and then I have my family ones that I will do with my girlfriend. And then, do you know what? Ultimately, I will do them with professionally and where I want it to be in that sense. So every day I can look at that and say, yeah, this is where I am. Like, and it's short, mid, and then real long term, right? And that's sort of it. Do you do it to that extent, or do you like your manifesto is?
Yeah,
is it similar to that?
No, not exactly. So what I have is I have my personal manifesto, which is composed of my personal wishes for myself and my family, especially, but also for my professional life. And then I have my goals that I derive from these wishes, and on a regular basis, like I have kids at the moment, so not more than every 6 months. I'm reviewing that and think about, like, I'm writing diary. I can recommend writing diaries. So what I'm doing is on a daily basis almost, I'm writing a work life diary, and I'm also writing a private diary for my private life. And I don't do it in a way that I plan, like with my relationship with Anthony. I want to establish that and that. I guess this is good. You can do this if your position requires that, especially when you're a leader and you need to. And I think this is often, I also underestimated that. And one lead that I had really also recommended me that. And I think it's a really good advice is you need to communicate a lot, and you need to really keep contact with all your peers, right? I think this was a very good advice for me. And you also need to have a very good sense, what are the processes around you where you need to set yourself in front on, and what is expected from you to deliver there to have visibility. Because what I also always think is the higher you climb, the more important is your communication style. When you're a normal software engineer, maybe it's 50-50, but when you're on a leadership track, you can have like decades of professional experience, but I think 70% of your success or 80% is very likely the way you communicate yourself, the way how you keep connections with your peers, the way how you position and present yourself. This is very important, and there it could help to really set goals for certain kind of collaborations, for certain meetings. What I'm also doing is on a professional level, I'm taking notes so that I have a reminder in my notebook. Meet with XYZ, although you don't have a project together. That helps massively in maintaining your network and maintaining your your career progression, because there is also people who need to think about you. When, for me, making career usually is also a lot of, there's a lot of, luck or chance involved, right? So someone comes to you because they remember you at a certain point in time, and then there comes an offer. Do you want to join us and help us build a team? Something like that.
Sometimes, sometimes if you look to leave 1 month too early or 1 month too late, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And there your plan might help, right? That you really say, build up strong network with these and these investors, or build up with certain colleagues, certain thing, or learn something, right? I mean, in general, what I realized is you only get better in topics if you continuously measure and invest, right? Because otherwise it's fading out. If I want to have a healthy relationship with my daughter, I should regularly spend time with her. And you need to set priorities and focus, because in the end of the day, there have been 24 hours, 6 or so. I think most of us at least are sleeping. Then some time at work and some time in private life. So you don't have too much of that resource.
Yeah.
And, but I'm doing it with a personal manifesto. I'm updating that on a regular basis. I'm writing a diary for work, and I'm writing a private diary where I also, because for me, this reflection is also important on my own performance. What I acknowledge is that we need to accept that a lot of this has to do with good and bad luck, sometimes also, especially career progression, what we just discussed. But then a diary helps me to reflect that it's usually a zigzag line, right? No one is a superhero and always goes up, 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 up. But it's usually a zigzag line, and the best we can do is learn and prepare.
I wanted to ask you, before we get to the end, because I can imagine it was something that was quite a shock for you when it first happened, right? It goes back to your time at Zalando. You came from being an engineer to then being, head of a team, and not only that, I was head of a machine learning as a service team, working on high performance computing, which, let's face it, is expensive stuff, right? You didn't study for that. You don't learn how to manage these expensive budgets and projects. And it's the case of a lot of people doing it now. Founders get seed money, they get Series A money, they have to spend it. Again, probably computer scientists, and they're like, "Hey, here's a couple of million, go ahead." What's that like? Coming from you're not a financial guy, but you now have been put in this situation because of your tech skills and management skills.
Yeah, this is a funny thing. The first thing I need to say, in Zalando, I was not head, right? We found the teams together, and we led people, and I was always preferring the principal track because I like technology so much. But we had a lot of budget responsibility at the time, and we had to spend. And I remember that I even had bad nights, bad sleeping, because there was a lot of money on the thing, and we had to say, do we spend it or not? What the first thing is, what I was astonished by is that the leaders in Zalando, and it was funny, you say, we want to buy that amount of GPU servers, and that is really a lot of money. So one server easily costs 120,000 euro because they have these NV links, blah, 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 high speed, everything. Yeah. So not cheap toys. And then I usually prepared very well the decisions, and although I was not from a financial background, I know statistics and math, so I was able to do the calculations, and I could compute return of investment and compare it in example with what it would cost in GCP or AWS. The same for cloud investments, right? So I could clearly see what I usually do a SWOT matrix in these situations, and I gave strategic advice. And then I was astonished that when I did the homework very well, what usually managers do is they look at the numbers, they take that as confirmation, and they see that you're very keen in your topic, right? And that you have a very proper argumentation. And then they say, let's do it. And that happened multiple times to me. And then suddenly you have something big, and you do it. I think in the afterthought, I was sometimes maybe also naive, to be very honest. So I just did it. Someone came around and said, this is growing. We need machine learning everywhere. We give you more money, then suddenly you end up with more money every year, and then you're responsible for that, and you spend it then also well, right? So you don't abuse that situation. Keep it very transparent. This is what I can see. Document how you're using money, and have a proper argumentation. So what I was usually telling my managers at the time is, I said, I want that every decision that we take here in this area has at least a depth of 1 or 2 jumps of thought behind it, right? So you don't do it because Amazon AWS tells you we have the largest internet cables, undersea cables in the world, and we are the best cloud provider. But you benchmark Google versus Amazon. You have a profound understanding of your technology. It's something that I can anyway recommend every leader. You should have 1 or 2 or 3 pillars of very profound understanding, so no one can really cheat you. You can really challenge solutions. And then you can go and say, we could go with AWS, or we could go with on-premise, or we could go with Google, and we will invest that and that, and we expect that and that return of invest. And we had a clear model, and we even could show, we measured also how much time that saves data scientists when they get a machine learning platform. And then we wrote all that down. We documented it very well, and everyone was happy, and it was a success story in the end. Right, and I think nowadays Zalando has a machine learning platform with 800 daily users, right? And it's even bigger. And this was also always my recommendation that I can give everyone, right? Do your homework. Don't be naive. Don't take money and then say, I watched some videos on YouTube and I read some blogs, and now I know how to do. I tell you how to do big business. Yeah. So and I can say when you nowadays when you speak about robotics and smart factory, it's even more money, right, that you're spending. And when you're building houses, it's not that you can just break them down and just build new ones. So you should have you should also know the experts in the field to consult people before you do this. So this was how it was feeling and how it was going, and do a proper job.
I spoke to a guy yesterday. He was working in a European research center. They're spending $500,000 on a GPU.
No, that's not much.
Not at all.
Not much. I mean, Anthony, we have to confess, already 5 or 6 years ago, training a mid-sized deep learning model was quickly costing €30,000 in AWS. On premise, when you did a good job in setting the hardware and scaling it, you could go down to 1/5 of that, right? And then you need to do the math. I bet with you. I gave some years ago a talk about HPC computing, and for me, it's always a backup if I have the numbers. Maybe I feel good here because I'm a rational guy. When I can show that the math is working behind the numbers, then for me, there is always a very good backup for a decision. What is a danger zone is this: no one knows the thing. Let's say you want to buy a bunch of robots for your factory, right? And you must spend multiple millions here. But you have the feeling no one in the team has done the thing before. No one really understands how the journey is, and no one is really an expert in that one. Then I would be careful with the decision, right? And then sometimes it's better to pause the decision and then call back again, because I think as a leader you must know your danger zones, right? If someone would come to me and say, "Can you buy us robots for a smart factory?" I would say, "Oh, guys, I'm not your guy to take a decision." It's always an honor to be responsible for a decision, but it's also important to know when you're not the best one to take budget or ownership on a decision.
Yeah.
And then, no.
Ready to finish off with some quick fire questions?
From my side? Or
Yeah, I've got the questions here. What is your personal favorite book, podcast, or piece of content that you would recommend for other listeners?
I can recommend the data engineering podcast from, I think it's called Data Engineering Podcast. It's a very popular one, the blue one with the dots. I always forget the name of the author. I don't listen to it too often. For leaders, I recommend the literature of Stephen Covey, 90 years literature. It's all about self-sufficiency and principles. I really like these books. And then, of course, I can recommend that book from Viktor Frankl. And when it comes to technical podcasts or philosophical podcasts, I like Lex Friedman a lot. He makes an awesome podcast. I think almost everyone knows this podcast. He interviews like Professor Wolfram. He had Sam Altman recently. Sometimes it's also like you think like, oh, okay, what are they chatting about here? I don't get it anymore because they do so deep divey things that you're completely lost. But I like it. Other resources. I'm following some stuff on Reddit. Usually, I'm not a big fan of hyping around with things. I anyway have not too much time to read myself. But yeah, this is what I usually do. I use the time when I'm on bike, getting the kids to school. On the way home, I have half an hour to listen to some podcasts. Yeah.
Commuter stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
What are your three non-negotiables when it comes to leadership?
What do you mean with negotiable? Can you specify?
Your non-negotiables. What are the rules? Rules that you set to be
Ah,
part of your team or to be part of your
yeah.
structure?
So what I can say, my style, as I said, my personal desire is when I'm leading people, and if I have the honor to leadership, I'm a strict believer of, so that when I'm leading someone else, this person is also leading me in a certain way, more or less. And what is for me, one thing that I learned is, especially what I said before with kind of this look towards the end, let's say, social interruptions always get precedence. Yeah, this is for me. That means if I have someone in the team and I realize, and this was especially relevant, Ukraine war, COVID, you saw that we are all human, right?
Yeah.
That is for me very important and also not negotiable. Of course, it doesn't mean that I'm jumping out of a meeting and going to somewhere, but I try when I get a feeling someone is not doing well or someone really has an issue, right? I want to be there also to have a contribution to the life of my colleagues, right? Not of their private life. I don't know their wives. They don't invite me for barbecue, but I want that the time we have together at a certain part of our life. I'm spending with some of them more time than with my wife, honestly, right? This is true, right? And I want to really, this is not negotiable for me. I want that they later on remember me as someone nice, friendly. They should say, this was a good time, right? We had a good time together, and I would work together with him again, right? I cannot guarantee that everyone does this, but yeah, the social interruptions get precedence for me, got more and more important the more I can say my small career progression that I did. Um, Another thing is, of course, for certain value settings, right? So there is a certain value for me. I think fairness is important, trust is important. Um, there are gray zones to certain things, so it's difficult to be fair with everyone to the maximum, right? The world is just sometimes not fair. You cannot offer everyone the same opportunities in your teams. But therefore, it's even more important to have trust and be transparent with topics, because most people are smart, and when you're authentic, then they will understand, right? And this is for me also. Yeah, I think
Thanks.
that's it.
Last question, Georg. If you had the opportunity to start and do it all again, what would you change?
What would I change all again from the very beginning? This is a good question. I
Often the
wonder,
hardest.
one of the hardest. I think I would not rely so much on my comfort zone. It took me really, I must say, I learned the most from my mentors and supervisors, which were the hardest. The guys I in the end didn't like, because those were the guys who pushed me out of my comfort zone. You know, I worked like 4 years as a data scientist slash thing. I had a good life. We got married, got baby, kids. Everything was nice and things were settling, right? But then you're like, should I really take the challenge? Should I really do this? Right? Like when there was this chance to start this initiative for the Zalando machine learning platform, which is now 7 years ago, right? Or 8 years, 7 years. I realized I was very unsure, right? I was really hesitant. I thought like, oh, I have my team, everything is good. I don't know what, do some recommendation engine thing, stuff you stay in your hood, don't take it. And in the aftershot, I think I was sometimes not brave enough, because I mean, what I realized is that, or what I also learned, is that every fear is a treasure, right? When you're fearing something, it's a good indication that there's something big to win for you, because there's something inside you which says, no, don't do it, risky, don't do it, right? Don't, uh, don't go that path. Stay where it's safe, right? You want to survive here. But often, when you're, of course, don't be stupid in this regard, right? Don't do very risky things. I don't know what, don't jump from out of the window or so, but then the fear is right.
Always good
But
advice.
in the work situations, I think a lot of us, and I also mentor people which struggle from that, this imposter thing, right? You think you're not good enough. You think you're not good enough. You see these other cool dudes which come from Amazon or Google and just joined the team or the neighboring team, and they are so much better than you. But actually, everyone has this thinking. Everyone is cooking with normal water, right? So I would say, from time to time, take a challenge. Go to a meetup, give a presentation, think about, rethink, challenge whether what would happen if you would do this for the next 10 years, what you're doing at the moment, right? Would you be super happy and things, or would you say, oh my God, that feels like hell, right? There was this German philosopher, I don't know which one was it, but one of them, he said the thing that he imagines hell like living your life over and over again, right? Or the life after death. And then I think this is a nice exercise for us, right? Are we happy at the moment? Are we motivated? Do you really want to stay like that? Or is it time to leave your comfort zone, right? Try something new. Are you motivated, energized? Yeah. I think, comfort zone is for me a big thing. And it's a beast. It always starts growing. You're a while in a position and it starts growing. And the longer you wait, the more challenging it is to put it back.
Nice. What an answer to round off our episode, Georg. And that will do us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Great to have you on a podcast episode again. This one with a difference.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Anthony. That was really a lot of fun, and I hope it was interesting. Not sure. Would love if people could give feedback.
That concludes another enlightening episode of the Leadership Labs podcast. If you found today's episode thought-provoking and informative, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Labs on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you once again for joining us on this journey through the Leadership Labs. Until next time.